Are you logging into Street Fighter 6 and in spite of all of your training and hard work, your JP matchups are just not working in your favor? He's the best character in the game and yet you still can't get a consistent win streak? Well, not to worry. In this video, we're going to go over 3 reasons why you are losing with JP, so let's get straight to it. All that being said, if you want to see more educational content like this on the channel, then be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get straight to the first point. So let's just get the most obvious thing out of the room first, and that is you're too heavily reliant on OD Amnesia. And I know the move is obviously really strong. It can really turn the tide of a situation into your favor, but that can only work if you're really unpredictable with how you utilize it. Too often I see so many players, regardless of their level, whether it be a master player, diamond, or even gold, I see so many players who just overuse OD Amnesia because they think it's your get out of jail free card. It can allow you to reset neutral and reapply pressure, but the more you do something and the more predictable you get with something, it's easier for the opponent to now dictate and almost not even predict, but just know what you're going to do. And so this is one of the reasons why you're losing. You're too reliant on a tool that should be utilized in more unpredictable ways. That is, you don't want to be throwing it out too often. You want to be trying your best to optimize other tools in your kit, not just becoming so dependent on one way of escaping. JP has a lot of tools in his disposal that he can use to keep the enemy away and also to just reapply pressure. He's got perfect parries, you've got drive reversals, you've got other things you can do to basically prevent the enemy from pressuring you on wake up. So if you find yourself just pressing OD Amnesia too often and you're losing because of it, then of course that's likely a good reason why you're losing so much. So that being said, let's move on to the second point. So the likely culprit as to why you're losing so many of your games with JP is because you just don't know how to play neutral properly. Your neutral positioning is bad and you're giving away space unnecessarily, either by jumping in when you don't need to, or you're just utilizing your tool set in a very non-optimal way. You're throwing out your tourbillons in neutral, you're not really throwing out enough feints, you're throwing your spikes out, but they're just in the wrong position to allow the enemy to jump over them and punish you. You're not anti-airing effectively. You're just utilizing your tools in a way that just gives the opponent enough of an opportunity to capitalize. And so if you're not cognizant of your mistakes, if you're not self-aware of your position in neutral, which is where JP tends to shine in most matchups, if you're losing because of your neutral, then the problem is you most of the time. And that's because you seem to think that trying to mirror, let's say, a high level player's playstyle and trying to put it into your playstyle won't work. You have to try and find your own method of approach. And then along the way, if you seem to have a little bit of issues in one area, then maybe you can try and cut some things out and then paste some things in that you've analyzed from other videos. But if you're just simply jumping into neutral and you're seeming to think that throwing out random tourbillons and not feinting the enemy and using your buttons in a really just predictable manner, you're not going to get away with that for too much longer, because at a high level the enemy is going to recognize that you like to use certain things, whether it be you love to use standing medium punch, or you love to use crouching medium kick a lot, or you'll always drive rush off of a standing fierce, or you'll always use your tourbillon, but you'll use the OD version more frequently than your regular versions, or you'll use the medium punch version of your tourbillon as the overhead rather than trying to use your low or your fierce version. So all of these things you need to really consider, because every one of your moves has a reason. It has a reason behind using it. So if you're just throwing it out and you're not thinking very carefully about why you're using it, how it's going to effectively change the pace of the match into your favor, then you're going to lose. And that's just the fact. If you're not willing to put the time in to understand your neutral better, then you'll always forever lose, regardless of where you at in terms of your rank, whether you're master or you're diamond or, etc. So that being said, let's move on to the last and final point. So number 3 likely coincides with number 2 in that you are just not willing to adapt to the other opponent. And with JP, you really have to understand matchups carefully because a lot of your moves can easily be negated by specific characters. So certain matchups like Cammy or Kimberly, where you're being heavily rushed down on, you have to really be thinking to yourself, okay, what tools in my disposal are going to be effective against this character? Not just, okay, well, I have Tourbillon, I have my spikes, I have departure, I'm going to set up my departure windows, I'm going to do setups, and I'm going to do all these cool things. But then in doing so, you're not thinking carefully about what you have to do specifically for Kimberly, specifically for Cammy. You're drawing in to this pattern of behavior that got you to a certain rank. So maybe you kept on using certain things to get you to master rank, but that pattern of behavior is so inconsistent that now at the highest level, where players are going to be a lot more cognizant and aware of your own pressure tactics, now you can't use that anymore. Maybe in gold and maybe in plat you got away with it, but now you can't. And because of your unwillingness to adapt and reapply new methods to your gameplay, you're losing now. So now you can't get away with OD Amnesia. You can't get away with, drive rush into crouching medium kick. You can't get away with any of these things that used to work, OD Tourbillon or, departure, in neutral, or your set players are so predictable that the opponent is just going to wake up, perfect parry you, and then punish you, or you're maybe too overly aggressive when you shouldn't be, or you're just too defensive when you should be a little bit more aggressive. These are things that are likely screwing up your game plan because you don't have a game plan. And because you don't have a game plan, that means you can't adapt. Because when you're able to adapt, it means you have something that you're prepared for, whether it be the matchup against, let's say, Cammy, or a matchup against Kimberly. Sure, the matchup will likely differ depending on the opponent you're facing, but the character itself will still have the same tool set. So you'll understand and have a structured mind when you can say, okay, I'm up against a Kimberly. Okay, well, they're likely to use this move, that move, and this move in neutral. So therefore, you, the JP player, can say, okay, let me try and set up my departure here. Let me try and use more feints to try and, basically force Kimberly or force Cammy to use this particular move. Okay, Cammy wants to dive kick in this matchup. Okay, let me just try and back away here. These are things you have to constantly be asking yourself on the fly. And if you're just going into a matchup thinking that every Cammy is going to do the same thing, or every Kimberly is going to do the same thing, or etc., then you're always going to run the risk of losing because you're falling into a pattern of behavior, a pattern of gameplay that isn't really consistent, and therefore you're not looking at the minute details. You're just looking at the match, and you're thinking, oh well, I beat a Kimberly last game, so I'm going to win this one. But then you lose, and that's because, again, you're trying to carry one game plan from a particular matchup or a previous match into a new one, and that isn't the case. You have to learn to predict, you have to learn to adapt, and learn to adjust on the fly. So hopefully this has given you some insight as to why you're losing with JP. And so if you like this content on the channel, then be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. Take part in my one-on-one professional coaching. The link is in the description. And until next time, you warriors, as always, stay strong and keep fighting. Peace.